Hi, I'm Ryan Cook. In this video, we will be demonstrating the steps to deploy Pacman across multiple OpenShift 4 environments using the Federation operator from Operator Hub. Let's get started. The first step is to create a project in the OpenShift UI for Pacman. The next step will be to go to Operator Hub and find the Federation operator and click to install it into our environment. Click Install, and then verify that the namespace defined is Pacman. Click Subscribe, and the operator will begin the installation. Admin is the default value for the context in each of the three kubeconfig files. This needs to be changed to reflect the three different environments. Now that the value of context is unique among all three kubeconfig files, we will export them as a variable kubeconfig. We will flatten all of the config files into a single file containing information about all three clusters. We will export the value of kubeconfig again, using the newly flattened file. The context of each one will be used in the subsequent steps. The next step is to download KubeFed CTL. It will be extracted in the bin directory of the current logged in user. Before proceeding, we must verify the Federation operator is successfully installed. The next step is to establish the federated clusters. We will start by establishing the host cluster context in East 1, and then we will also add East 1 as a federated cluster. The next step is to add the cluster context East 2 to the host cluster context of East 1. And finally, we will add in the West 2 cluster. The next step is to enable certain federation types within the Pacman namespace. This could include deployments, secrets, service accounts, and services. Before proceeding, it is important to verify that the clusters are in a ready state. Now that the clusters are ready, we will clone the Federation dev repo and move to the Federated Pacman directory. Specific files must be modified before deploying the Pacman application. The first step is to replace replica members here with the MongoDB endpoints that were created in the previous demo. The file for federated ingress must be changed as well. The first step is to create the federated Mongo secret. This secret will be populated on all the federated clusters. Next, we will deploy a federated service. The last step is to create the federated deployment, which will place Pacman pods on each of the three clusters. HA proxy is used to provide fast failover between the three federated clusters. Modify the O1 HA proxy file, specifying the FQDN that was used with the federated ingress object for Pacman. The O1 HA proxy file also must be modified to supply the routes to the different OpenShift clusters. Now that the O1 HA proxy file has been modified, we will create a config map to be used by HA proxy. Next will be the creation of the HA proxy service. This will create an ELB within AWS. Last will be the deployment of HA proxy. We need to know the value of the ELB to associate that with the DNS record. The next step will be to go to Route 53 and create an A record for the FQDN of the Pacman application. An alias is used to target the ELB that was created during the HA proxy service creation. Now comes the fun part, playing the game. Take note of the zone, as it will change as we move the application between OpenShift clusters. As you can see, we've saved our score to the persistent database. The next step is to modify the federated deployment. We only want to run the application in the East 2 cluster. As you can see, the replicas for East 1 and West 2 have been set to 0. Taking a look at the deployment after the modifications, we can see that East 1 has 0 pods running, East 2 has 1 pod running, and West 2 has 0 pods running of the Pacman application. Now when we play the game, take note of the zone. Regardless if we refresh or open a private browser, the zone will always be East 2. After playing the game, we see that our previous scores still exist. This is because of the federated Mongo deployment. We will now modify the replica count again for the clusters. We will now have 1 pod in East 1, 1 pod in East 2, and 1 pod in West 2. Going back to the game, you can see that now East 1 is listed as the zone. This concludes the demonstration. Thank you for watching.